Welcome everyone to this mastering on unlocking the advanced power of Graph Builder and JMP. Today I have two goals for you. I want you to be able to visualize your story, your conclusion, your outcome from any data analysis that you're doing through a graph as simple as possible. And while doing that while it's as simple and as easy as possible through the Graph Builder. So for the agenda for today is going to be the following. I'm going to go through multiple examples. So I have 4 examples or 4 data tables that I'm going to go through. And the outcome from these examples will be the following over here. I would like you to learn how to change the graph type, how to work with overlapping multiple graph types over each other, how to work with multiple Y variables and whether you're stacking them or putting them, overlap on top of each other, how you do some manipulations for the axes and ordering the items in the graph. And last but not least, the power of the shift button and the control button. Okay, so those are really the things that I want you to learn about. Before I get into a graph builder, I want you to know the following. Most of the items in the graph, and obviously I'm going to go through this through the examples, but I want you to remember already 4 items in the graph that will be your best friends. 1, right-clicking in the middle of the graph. 2, the main red triangle next to the graph builder. 3, right-clicking on the axes themselves. And 4, right-clicking on the legend itself. So these places are the ones where you want to go to. These places are where you're going to find most of your items. Okay. So without further ado, let's start with our first example. Through which we're going to learn so many things. That alone, honestly, this one example alone is going to cover so much about Graph Builder. This is right now what you're seeing is the outcome, and we're going to learn together how from this data table, how I'm going to get this first graph together. So I'm going to move my journal to the side and introduce you to the data table. The data table is nothing but, time series of concentration for the carbon dioxide and ozone concentration since the 1980s to 2017. And that's pretty much it. That's all I have, just the year and carbon dioxide and ozone. And I would like to show these 2 concentrations, one on the right side, one on the left side of the same graph. So I'm going to go to Graph Builder. And let's start with the basics. So I'm going to move the year to the bottom. And then I'm going to move the carbon dioxide to the right. So without adding anything, I already have, some visuals about the CO2 level as a function of the year. Now you see over here, I have already the points and the smoother selected already, but I'm not too interested in the smoother today, so I'm going to uncheck it. And you're going to see that we have actually multiple type of graphs that we can create. So maybe I can make a line, I can make a bar, I can make maybe a box plot. But what if I wanted to have, 2 types of graphs on top of each other? I have 2 options. Either I can right-click and then click on Add, and then tell it that I would like to also show the line. So now this one is a line. Doesn't show that much different from the smoother, but you can see it over here. I had the line selected. Or I can click on Shift and then click on the line. And then now I have 2 type of graphs on the same two types of graph on the same main graph that I have. So let's say I also want to add the box plot if I'm trying to be creative. I can add as many as possible to the graph. And all that is by either clicking on the shift. So I was only able to add the bar chart because I have right now the shift button clicked, or by adding, let's say, the area, for example. Okay, and then I'm gonna uncheck it. So this is one of the first things that I want you to learn about, which is adding multiple type of graphs on top of each other. Now, that's one. Two, I want you to learn about how I can bring in multiple variables to the same graph. So right now I only have the CO2 on the left side. But what about ozone? What if I want to add ozone as well to this graph? I'm going to select ozone, and you're going to see that as I drag it or get closer to the graph, multiple things get selected or shaded if you want, or highlighted in a way that I can know that this ozone variable can go into multiple places. But what really I'm interested in is those 4 items over here that you see. And I'm going to explain the difference between them. So if I hover on the top one, what's going to happen is that the ozone variable is going to be created, or another y-axis is going to be created for the ozone. Whereas if I go to the bottom, the same thing, but flipped is going to happen. So my ozone is going to be on the bottom. Now, if I go just in the middle, what will happen is my CO2 will be replaced by the ozone. Okay. And what I want is actually to go over here in this part where I will have on the same axis both ozone and CO2 showing up together in the same axis. Okay, so this is the first step that I will need to do for me to be able to later on move the ozone to the right side. So now that I have the ozone and CO2 both on the same y-axis, I'm going to right-click on the axis and click on Move Right. So JMP asks me which one of these graphs is what I want to move to the right. So I'm going to tell it that ozone is the one that I would like to have it move to the right. And here you go. You can see that now I have CO2 on the left and ozone on the right, each with its own axis. And the reason, honestly, I needed that is because the ozone range is very low. So if I had them both still on the left, I wouldn't be able to visualize that my ozone is decreasing as a function of the year. So now let's get into more enhancements for my aesthetics of the graph. So for instance, I would like to make those 2 lines a little bit thinner. So I'm going to right-click now on the legend itself. So right-clicking on the legend itself makes me be capable of changing the width. So I'm going to change the width for these 2 to 1. I don't see the settings or the legend for the circles, and that's okay. So the way we're going to do it so that we can see the legend and make, for example, these points a little bit bigger is that we're going to go to the main red triangle and go to the legend settings. And in the legend settings, this is where I can control which items in this legend I can see or want to see or not. So check marking these 2 will bring them into my legend. Now, obviously, unchecking them all will remove everything that I have in the legend settings. But this trick of going to the legend settings over here and checking and unchecking is important so that I can, access the graph type that I want to change things in. So either I have 2 options actually. Either I can change the marker size over here, or I can just simply do it from there. So for example, the marker size, or not the marker size, I'm going to just change the marker itself. I would like to change it into a hollow marker. And while I'm at it, either here or there, I would like to flip these colors. Don't ask me why, but I like to see the CO2 in red. So I'm gonna change that to red for the line. And for the ozone, I'm gonna make it blue. And same things for these markers. So just going to the color, adding others that I have, and these two custom colors, I had them saved because I like them. And then I'm gonna do the same thing for ozone and CO2, and then I'm gonna click OK. So I'm getting closer to that graph, visualization that I wanted. Now, I don't want this legend to be inside or on the side. But in the same time, I want to be able to know when I'm sharing this graph, I want people to be able to know, which one of these lines or curves is CO2 and which one is ozone. So right-clicking on this one, I can see that there is something called label, and I can actually add the name of this label into the curve itself. But before I do that, I don't want the whole name to show up. I don't want mean of parentheses carbon dioxide. So I'm gonna change first, actually from the legend setting. So I'm gonna go back again over here and mention that I can change what's inside of what's in the legend, or what am I seeing in the legend. So probably I'm just going to write CO2, and then for this one I'm going to write O3, and then I'm going to click OK. Okay, so this is first step. Then I'm going to click on label and add the label. So you see now I have a label for this curve, and then same thing for the ozone. I'm going to click on label, and then this one looks a little bit like one of the circles, but I hope that it's far enough that it'll be okay. Okay, and then last but not least, I'm going to remove all these legends. So I'm going to go back again to this legend settings and uncheck every single one of them. But it's important to have them still on, add this label first, then uncheck them so that you can have these two labels. All right, what else did I have in this graph? I also had the reference line. So I had the reference line on the 400, and I had a reference line on the 0.7075 for the ozone. So I'm gonna right click on this setting on the axis now, right? So we said the main 4 places to go to is the blank space in the graph, the right clicking on the legend when I had it, the right-clicking on the red triangle where I can see the legend setting, and the 4th spot is right-clicking on the axis itself and going to axis setting. So over here, I am able to add a reference line. So I'm going to add one at 400. I'm going to change its color to that nice red. And I'm going to change the style to a dashed. And I'm going to make it a little bit thicker, and I'm going to click on add. If you want to change anything, let's say you want to make it 1 again, you click on it over here, you change whatever you want to change, and then click on update. Okay, but I actually want it to be 2, so I'm going to update it again. And then I click OK. So you see now I have a reference for CO2, and I'm going to do quickly the same thing for the other axis where I have 0.075 for my ozone in blue, and 2, and line style of dash, and then adding it. And then here you go. Now we have these 2 settings, these 2 reference lines added. Now, the last thing I also want to show here is us being able to change the range of these axes. So technically, if I right click again to the axis setting, I can change my minimum and my maximum. So for instance, in this case, I can make it a little bit maybe at 330 over here. Maybe this one I'll keep it at 410. I can change the increment. So instead of going every 20, I can go every 10 and so on. But what I want to show you is this little hand tool that I will have anytime I hover over the axis. So it depends on where I go on the axis, I can do different things. So if I am hovering over the middle and I go left, I will zoom out. Whereas if I go inside, I will zoom in. Okay. And then if I go to the top, you see the hand goes from, looking to the left to looking to the right. I can drag it down. And same thing from the bottom, I can drag it up. And I'll do the same thing over here. So I want to drag it down a little bit and maybe drag it down a little bit further more from the top. And I can do the same thing for the years as well. So again, this is a similar to going to axis settings and changing the minimum and maximum. But if you want to do it in a more of in a faster way, if you want, where you want to see what's going on or how it looks, I like to use this method instead. Okay. So then all I have to do now, I think I like my graph. I'm going to click done, and we have our very first graph that we created together. I'm just going to change the title and change that to concentration versus year. And might as well show you this one again. Let me open the control panel. If you don't want to see this title, either you can delete it or you can click on show and hide it. So we'll still stay alive. It's still there. We just decided to just hide it so that if we want to have access to it later on, we can have access to it. Okay. Alrighty. So this is our first graph that we created. Next one will be same graph, so same data table. We're just going to take a little bit of a different approach with showing the two y-axes, one stacked on top of the other. So let me show you how it's going to look like. So you see it over here. I have the ozone, the CO2 stacked on top of each other. And what you're noticing probably is the fact that one has a box plots inside of it. One has very, very much similar, graph type as what we had just now. So let's do the simple parts again. So the year, the carbon dioxide, and the ozone on the top, right? Those were the first steps. And this is where I'm going to emphasize more on those shift and control keys that I told you about. So if I want, first of all, let's remove the smoother. So by just clicking on the smoother, I removed it from both of them. Now I'm going to click on shift. If I just click on shift and add the line, what's going to happen, it's going to add it for both of them. But that's not what I want. I want to just add the line to the top one. So by clicking on shift and clicking on control, I'm going to just have, actually I need it the other way. So I'm going to uncheck the bottom. And as you see over here now, I split my graph into two. And that's all because of my control button. And I'm able now to show only the line on the top graph. And for the bottom, I would like to add a box plot. So I'm going to click on the bottom part. And then now you see I have not only the points, but the points and box plot. I don't think I'm going to have the points because they look ugly. And I'm going to add the line instead. So now on top, I have the points and the line. On the bottom, I have a box plot and the line. And that's a trick that I, not too long ago, have learned about, but it has been coming very handy and beautiful. I'm not going to do looking at the time, I'm not going to do too many extra things into it because, you know, everything else we've done before together, changing the color, changing everything else, really the focus on the shift and the control. So again, remember the shift is so that you can add multiple type of graphs on top of each other. The control is so that you choose where in whether you want to do it on the top or on the bottom. By the way, we can do the same thing for the x-axis. So we might choose, so let me try something. So if I do it something like this, and then I have shift and control, and then now you see I have a quadrant where I have 4 different type of graphs, okay? And that's possible only because of the control. Adding another type of graph, that's possible because of the shift. If I click just on control, and if I just click on the line, you see now I just click on the control and I only have a line type of graphing on the top quadrant. Okay, and you can do so many things, but essentially I'll just show you this one again. So, you know, we learned from the first example enough information that you will be able to do something similar to this on your own. So that's for the first example. So I'm going to close this data table. And I'm going to go to my second example. I'm staying under the same theme of pollutants, where this is another example where I have different pollutants, you know, as a function of the year with concentration for each of these pollutants. And in this example, I'm going to show you 3 different type of examples, okay, or examples of graph. So the first one, I'm going to focus a little bit on the geometrical mapping that is part of a graph builder. So I'm going to click on the graph builder. And I want you to emphasize or focus on this part in the graph builder, the map shape. Anytime you have a column with states, with countries, mostly, you know, the states, countries of the world, European countries, I know also Japan, provinces in Canada. As long as you have one of these, you are easily able to use this map shape function over here. I have a whole different webinar just about, you know, using map shape for semiconductor wafers, but this is not here nor there. So I'm just going to focus on geometrical mapping for maps that are already built in JMP. So as I said, those maps for the world, for the countries, European, Canada, all these are built in. So what I need now is to have a column in my data table that has the states. And this I had to recode it from this part. So because this part had cities and the state, so I had to extract the state name. I created this column from it. And as you see here, I have about 44 states. So not all of them, which is fine. As long as I don't have more weird names, as long as it's less than the actual number of the states that actually exist, then I will be okay. Okay. So first of all, let me just start with showing you what I want to create. So I want to create a graph where I have the concentration of different pollutant as a function of different states. And I want to do it with a local data filter so that I can dynamically click on one of the pollutants and see how that concentration changes as a function of the state that I'm looking at. One thing to mention is that this is a dynamic graph, so I cannot, copy paste this to a Word document or Excel document because I want to be able to click on each one of these data, or I want to filter through the different pollutants. So something like this, you would put it on a dashboard, for example, in JMP Live or JMP Public. So let's start. So first part is I'm going to move that state into the map shape. And you see already I have the borderline for each of these states. You'll notice that I don't have North or South Dakota inside of it because I did not have these two states inside this column, which is okay. All I have to do is click on Show Missing Shapes. So as long as you check mark this part, you will get them over here. And it's really as simple as the following. All I have to do is fill up the color part with the concentration variable, with the concentration column. So I'm going to drag this into the color, and I already now see the different concentrations per state. Now the problem is that these concentration is an average of all the pollutants that I have, which is not what I want. So I'm going to click done, but then I'm going to go to the red triangle, and I hope that you're familiar with the local data filter. If not, I highly recommend you start using it because this is what makes, graphing or anything in JMP much more powerful because we're able to dynamically, take a subset out of the data as a function of a specific column, right? Subset or a filter, whichever way you look at it. So clicking on the pollutant, I'm going to click plus. And then I'm going to choose which pollutant I'm looking at. So this is, again, a dynamic graph where I'm able to show a geometrical map of each pollutant with a kind of like a continuous range for the concentration so that I can compare the different states' emission. Okay. Few little tricks I would like to mention is I can add a label to the state itself. So the only reason I have the state over here is because I've added this label to the state. So let me remove it, first of all. Let me remove it and do it together again. So if I remove the label and if I hover on, you'll see, the number of rows and whatnot. So that's not what I want. I'm going to right click again on the column and add a label. And then this way, when I right click, or not right click, just hover on it, I can see the state and then I can freeze it. Now, if this is the type of label you're happy with, by all means, to me, I want to elevate my label. I'm going to unfill it. I'm going to remove the tagline. And I'm going to replace the text and remove all the other stuff that I don't necessarily care for. And all I just wanted was the name of the state and drag it back inside. And then that's all I want to see. Okay. And obviously you can do the same thing for each one of them. Let's say you just want the name of the state that has the highest concentration. And this way you can just, emphasize that this state had a very high concentration for 2.5 micrometer particulates. Okay. So I'm going to stick with the same data table and then show you two extra type of graphs that we can create. Actually, I want to show you something else. So you see this legend? I want to move it into the inside, but I don't want it to be vertical. I'm going to show you how you can make it horizontal. And for you to be able to make it horizontal, we're going to right click on the gradient. And just over here on the bottom, we're going to click on horizontal. Number of labels, I want it to be always 3 for no matter what type of filter I add, and click OK. All right. So again, right clicking, gradient, making it horizontal over here, changing the number of labels over there, allowed me to make something, cleaner or smaller for the graph. And it will be the same thing for all. Alrighty. So that's for graph 1 of example 2. The graph 2 and 3, let me show you how they look like first, and we're going to see together how we're going to do them. So this one is a stacked bar chart. This one is an area curve. Both of them were not done from this direct graph data table. I just had to split the pollutants into multiple columns first. So splitting this data to by clicking on tables and split. So by doing so, allowed me to do what I'm going to show you next. I just have the splitting function saved, so I'm just going to quickly click on that. And then you'll see that I have these 4 or 6 pollutants split as the following. And let me get this journal out of the way, and let's continue together to create this stacked bar chart. So what's the story in this graph? I want to show the main states or the states that have the highest elevated number or emission for these different 6 pollutants. So again, I'm going to go to Graph Builder. And I'm going to move them over here with the Shift button. So moving it with the Shift button will allow me to have different axes. So same way we did that with the y-axis, now I'm doing the same thing with the Shift axis to have them separated as the following. And then I'm going to take the state as my y. So now I'm seeing the concentration per state. And what's going to allow me to do that stacked bar chart is clicking on bar and a tedious work of changing the bar style from side by side to a packed type for each one of them. So it's not going to take a lot of time because they're only 6, but if someone knows of a faster method to just do the same thing for all of them, that will be fantastic. For now, the only method that I know is that I actually have to go to each one of them. So what you see over here now is a stacked bar chart where I'm showing, all these bars for every single state, but only with the main one, so the biggest one, colored. Okay, and then that is split between the different pollutants. And in this case, actually, I don't think I'm going to even need this legend setting, so I'm going to uncheck every single one of them. Okay, and obviously, if you want, we can change the title, all that. But this is kind of a very nice graph that people like it. We can still change a little bit how much the range for each one of them if you are in need of doing so, just to make it a little bit nicer. But then again, let me go back. I can imagine that I did it a little bit quick. So again, it was under the bar. And then under the bar style, I had to go to the packed type. Okay. And this will allow me to emphasize only on the states with the highest emission for each one of them. And that's because the packing order is by size. Okay. Alrighty, so this is the second graph from the second example. So I'm going to click on done. I can close it. Now the last one is, or for this example at least, will be this one, which is the different areas, showing different areas for the different pollutants. And I think this is a nice type of graph because of the fact that each one of these pollutants have a different level. So we're able to see them all in one graph. So this one is going to be easy to create. So all we're going to have to do is click on graph. I'm going to take year as the bottom, as the x-axis. I'm going to take all these ones together. All right, so no shift, no control, they're all on the same axis. And then I'm going to click on the Y, on the area type of graph. Probably I'm going to change the legend setting name. If I can change the color on each one of them, you know, if I'm not too happy with the colors themselves, I can do that as well. So let's move on from this example to the following. So this is the graph that I really like, you know, having an engineering background. I love the stress versus strain example. And this one comes from two things, obviously a graph builder, but also I will be showing you the multiple file import capability in JMP. So if you remember, under file import multiple files, we have the option of taking multiple CSV files and bringing them all together. So I'm going to quickly do that, but this is a huge part of how we're doing this graph. So I would like to take every graph, every file that ends with a .csv. Okay, and clicking enter. So I have one graph, so one curve per temperature was taken in a CSV file, and I would like to combine all these files together in one JMP file. I'm going to take the file name so that because the file name has the information about the temperature itself, so I'm going to import that. And as you see here, I have a strain, I have the stress, and I have the file name from which I'm going to recode and take my information about a temperature. So I'm going to click on Recode Advanced Extract Segment. I will use the underscore as a character as a delimiter and take the second part, click OK. And then I have now a new column that I'm going to call T. And instead of data type numeric, I'm going to make it continuous. I'm going to click OK. And I see that stress is also a character, so I'm going to make sure that this is not the case and fix that to numeric as well and continuous as well. So now when I go to Graph Builder, I'm going to take my strain on the bottom, stress on the top. It shows me everything as a function of the smoother. I don't want the smoother, I want the point. And I'm gonna use my temperature as my coloring variable. And then same thing as we've done before. I can move my setting over here. I don't want the stress, so I'm going to go to my legend setting, uncheck this. If you want to do similar to what we've done before and make it flat, horizontal, I can do the same thing. Okay, this is a beautiful graph that I really like because it emphasizes on the fact that I'm able to import multiple files from different files and stack them on top of each other and separate them based on the fact that each one is coming from a different temperature or different condition of experimentation and so on, and be able to show all this in a graphical method and see the effect that at higher temperature my stress value is much lower than at the lower temperature. I did have one more example with multiple responses. So I'm going to click on this data table. And the reason I wanted to show this example is because of the fact that multiple responses is a new feature in JMP 17. where I have different processes. So, or different. This example has different DOEs. So I had the baseline, and people the different examples or different DOE tests, and they try to see how many times we get defects. So did we get some silicon defect, oxide defect, miscellaneous, none found, and so on. And I wanted to show this all in one graph where I can see the percentage, or maybe I'll change that into a count of different defects for different recipes. So the trick is to have these defects as multiple response. So if you're not familiar with multiple response, usually whenever you have a character type of entry, it's going to be ordinal or nominal. Okay, so ordinal or nominal. But in this particular case, we want it to be a multiple response. So we have to change it from here. Not necessarily, we cannot do it from here. We just have to go to the properties again, click on multiple responses, and get it changed to the following. Then we're gonna go to Graph Builder. So we're gonna again take those processes with the Shift button. So processes with the Shift button and put it over there. Put it over there, and then we're gonna take the defects found and put it as a y-axis. So because we are making, or we are telling JMP that these defects found are multiple responses, so by default, JMP is understanding that contamination is one data, corrosion is another data entry, doping is one data, silicon defect is another data entry, right? Whereas if it was not, so let's do that quickly. If it was not multiple responses, what we would have had was, if we stuck to nominal, the defects found would have been, whatever different type of data entry I have. And then, obviously, as you see, there's multiple combination of defects. So changing that to multiple response makes JMP understand that each data entry between the different commas is one entry. By the way, if you did not have a comma, and if you had something else, you can click on the properties of multiple responses, and let's say the separators are a dash, or a separator is a slash. Okay, so you can decide on that, but the default one is a comma. Okay, so let's fix that. Character, multiple responses, clicking on OK. And what I want to do, I wanted to change it to histogram, so that I can see, well, how many, actually, let's check mark the counts. So how many of each different defects I had for the baseline, for the first DOE, second, etc. And to be able to change the coloring, I'm going to go to this Customize button, click on one of them, change that to gray, change this one, I don't know, to pink, change that one to a nicer blue, and change that one, I don't know, to purple, and then click OK. So this is a beautiful visualization of, and probably I'll remove that legend, but all that to say that it's a beautiful visualization of the effect of the different recipes that we had on the defect, on the number of defects that we had for each one of these recipes, by showing each one of the types of the defects that I had. So that's all I wanted to show for today. Thank you so much.